you're tuning into something different, something deeper. Welcome to a space where the unseen becomes seen, where the patterns beneath reality are decoded. This isn't just a podcast, it's a journey into the mechanics of belief, perception, and the multidimensional truths shaping our world. If you've ever felt like an outsider looking in, questioning the systems you're told to follow, you're in the right place. This is the OUTKAST, the Pattern Podcast. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping straight into something really core, this idea of patterns. And we're not just talking about, surface level stuff. We're looking at these fundamental frameworks that, well, according to the sources we've got, really shape our minds, our bodies, even our spirits.
Exactly. Yeah, we have two really interesting sources for this. One's called About Secret Societies and Synthetic Copying of Patterns. It gives this historical view,
Right.
How knowledge, belief systems got structured, sometimes reproduced in, let's say, intriguing ways.
Okay.
And then the other one, Reclaiming Sovereignty Through Symbolic Decoding, that gets more into how these patterns might actually be working in our lives right now and how we can maybe get more aware of them.
Okay, so that's really our goal here today for you listening. To unpack this, to help you become more aware of these underlying patterns and understand maybe the role they're playing. And it brings up this pretty potent question from one source. Even if you don't buy into any specific belief system, could you still be working within patterns someone else created?
Yeah, that's the kicker, isn't it?
Let's dig in.
So that first source, About Secret Societies, it starts with this idea that, well, ancient wisdom wasn't just out there for everyone. It was often kept within mystery schools and passed down really carefully, only to initiates, priests, highly trained people after they passed some serious tests.
So it wasn't just about learning facts, it was like a whole process. You had to prove you were ready.
Exactly, like earning it. But then the source says this knowledge, well, it got fragmented over time and synthetically reproduced.
Synthetically reproduced. Okay, what does synthetic mean here? Is it like fake?
Not exactly fake, more like replicated, but potentially altered, maybe tweaked to push a certain outcome or interpretation.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like photocopying something, but maybe the copy isn't quite perfect, or someone's highlighted certain bits and ignored others. The source even mentions magical books as an example of this synthetic replication. They carry information, sure, but how it's presented might be designed to influence belief.
Right. Like taking an original idea, changing it slightly, but still calling it the original thing. Okay, so the source lays out three main ways this kind of knowledge kept going or was replicated. What are they?
Okay, so the first one is through secret societies themselves. Groups that claim they have a direct, unbroken line right back to those ancient mysteries.
Like they're the direct inheritors.
Exactly. That's the claim. The second way is what the source calls the cultus.
Cultus.
Yeah, think of it as a symbolic translation of the deeper stuff, made into rituals, beliefs, things that are maybe easier for a wider group to grasp. But, and this is key, the source says it's often erroneously replicated.
Erroneously replicated. So the original nuance gets lost, like that game of telephone.
Precisely. The symbols might remain, but the deep meaning behind them could fade or get twisted as it's passed along.
Okay, that makes sense. And the third way?
Well, the third one is maybe the most subtle. It's the idea that the general population, the people, become the unconscious depository for these doctrines.
Unconscious depository.
Wow. So fragments of this knowledge may be altered, maybe incomplete, just get embedded in our culture, our assumptions, our background beliefs. They shape how we see things without us even realizing where those ideas came from. It's like background noise we've absorbed.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. So it's not just hidden groups. These patterns can seep into whole society.
That's the argument, yes. Subtly shaping mass belief. And the source does give some historical context, too, tracing how these kinds of initiatory groups developed, particularly in the West.
Right. Who are we talking about?
Well, it mentions a kind of thread, linking groups like the Gnostics, the Arabs, especially how they transmitted knowledge alchemists, the Knights Templar, Rosicrucians, and then eventually the Freemasons.
Okay, a familiar list for some.
Right, part of this Western esoteric tradition. But interestingly, the source also claims that modern Freemasonry, for instance, while it still uses a lot of the old symbols, well, it's largely lost the original meanings behind them.
That's a big claim. So the symbols are there, but the understanding isn't necessarily.
That's what's suggested, like the shell remains, but the kernel is gone. And the source also points to Alexandria, Why was that place so important?
Good question.
It was this massive center of learning, right? A real melting pot for different philosophies, religions, mystical ideas. So it's seen as a key source, a fountainhead for a lot of these Western secret societies.
Where different streams came together?
Exactly. And then later the source mentions the discovery, you could say, of similar groups in the East India, Tibet, which apparently led to the Theosophical Society being formed, trying to kind of bridge these Eastern and Western paths.
Trying to piece things back together, maybe. Okay, let's circle back to the symbols and this cultist idea. How were symbols used to spread these synthesized patterns?
Well, the source suggests these societies deliberately put their synthesized symbolism into early forms of initiation rites and also into religious sects, the cultists.
Okay.
The idea was to create these symbolic frameworks that would shape how different groups understood the spiritual, the cultural. It suggested that ancient priests actually understood there was a fundamental unity behind different beliefs, but they adapted the symbols for different cultures. The problem today, the source argues, is that sectarianism groups focusing only on their own symbols has kind of hidden this potential underlying synthetic unity.
Right, like everyone's speaking their own symbolic dialect and forgetting there might be a common root language. This makes me think of that Confucius quote the source uses. Signs and symbols rule the world, words do not. Why is that so important here?
Oh, it's crucial because it highlights how powerful nonverbal stuff, symbolic stuff, is in shaping our patterns. Symbols can kind of bypass our logical brain, right? They hit us on a deeper level, influencing our subconscious. They create these really strong, often unspoken frameworks for how we see reality.
Frameworks
that
connect perfectly to the second source, reclaiming sovereignty. What on earth are egregores?
Right, egregores. Holds a belief collectively and puts a lot of energy into it, focusing on it. It can create this kind of energetic construct.
An energetic construct.
Yeah, formed by shared thought, shared emotion. Think of it like a collective mindset or a powerful group identity that almost takes on a life of its own.
Okay.
And the critical part is, if you invest your energy into what the source calls false patterns beliefs that maybe aren't really true for you or aren't serving you, you can get tangled up in them. It's described as a kind of spiritual captivity driven by the momentum of these collective thought forms.
Wow, so our shared beliefs can create these almost self-sustaining energy fields that influence us back. That leads into this idea of symbolic control, doesn't it? How does that connect to spiritual control?
Exactly. The second source makes that link very directly. It suggests that these encoded systems, whether they look like religion or science or even media narratives, they work by directing our energy, our attention, and ultimately our beliefs through the symbols they use.
So by controlling the main symbols and how they're interpreted,
they can subtly guide our thoughts, our actions, essentially shaping the patterns of our lives.
It's like an invisible architecture made of symbols influencing us. Now, both sources mention metaphysics. How does that fit in? Why is it presented as important for understanding this?
Metaphysics here is framed as the study of the fundamental nature of reality itself, the underlying principle.
And really the deep stuff.
The really deep stuff, yeah. It's presented as a higher viewpoint, looking beyond the specific doctrines of any one group, whether it's a cult or religious. The idea is that while groups like, say, Freemasonry might have held fragments of metaphysical truth once, many have just become, as the first source puts it, repeated or synthesized by the same patterns from the very beginning. Or as the second source echoes, they become patterned reenactments.
Just going through the motions without the deep understanding.
Potentially, yeah. So metaphysics is about trying to see past those surface rituals or dogmas to the fundamental reality underneath.
Which leads us right to the core message of reclaiming sovereignty, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That awareness of these patterns is the first step to freedom.
Absolutely. That's the thread tying it all together.
So how does knowing this history, this potential manipulation, help us get back our own sovereignty?
Well, by understanding how these patterns might have been formed, how they got passed down, maybe even twisted, you can start to spot their influence in your own life. If you ever feel, overwhelmed by information or like you're being subtly pushed in a certain direction, understanding these potential underlying patterns gives you a lens, a framework for analyzing it. It lets you shift from just unconsciously going along with patterns to consciously looking at them, evaluating them, and then making more informed choices about what you believe, where you put your energy. That's the core message, really, from both sources. Awareness is the key.
Moving from being passive to being an active observer.
Yeah.
and maybe even the author of your own experience. This has been really fascinating digging into this.
It really has. Recognizing this deeper metaphysical architecture behind our belief seems pretty crucial if we want to reclaim that personal agency, that sovereignty.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that leaves you, the listener, with some big questions to ponder, drawing from reclaiming sovereignty. What patterns really seem to be running the show in your thoughts, your emotions, your actions? Are you living by conscious choice, or maybe running on some kind of programming you didn't install? How might some of these, let's call them synthetic beliefs, have shaped your own spirituality?
And where is your focus going, your intention, your energy? And ultimately, who or what benefits from that flow? These are powerful questions.
They really are.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with. If even the desire for freedom, the path towards sovereignty, can itself be framed within a pattern, what level of awareness, what fundamental shift might be needed to truly step outside any pre-designed structure?
Wow. Something to really sit with. Keep observing, keep questioning, keep up your own deep dive.